What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another post-game show. Mets post-game show with three of us. The three amigos. Obviously, CP. Obviously, John. Obviously, myself. You know, from Pure Adrenaline Sports. We're going to get to him and talk to him in a little bit. You guys know him. But our New York Mets are on a roll right now. 9 in a row. 78 and 64, just killing it right now. 4-0. Everything went well. Jose Quintana pitched well, and I love the veteran. And this guy just comes out of nowhere. Every time we question him, he comes up with a big start. And we're gonna get started with saying hello to the man John. John, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I've always been hanging out in your guys' pre and post game shows anyway, so I know CP and I have kind of teamed up a little bit to do one show so far. But Rob, thank you so much for reaching out today and asking me to come on today's stream as well. So, man, you guys do have a great, even when it's guys like Hector on the show, you guys have a great group of Met fan content creators. So I kind of feel like Daniel Murphy here being the third guy in the booth filling in for Ron Darling a little bit. So.
Hey, listen, you have a postseason like of Daniel Murphy. I mean, you're going to be better than all of us, man. I'll tell you that. So great to have John here, and we're going to get his perspective on the game. And, of course, my main man, CP. How you doing, Chris?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's beautiful to watch this trio up on the screen right now in the post game after the Mets have won 9 straight games. It is crunch time baseball in September, and the New York Mets they're on fire. Let's just call a spade a spade. They are on fire. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Thank you all so much, whether you're in the Pure Adrenaline Sports chat, Rob's chat, or my chat. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Like, it means a lot for you all to be here. Thank you all. Listen, spam those W's, baby. Please, if you are in the chat, spam those W's. Our New York Mets have won 9 straight. And guess what? Jose Quintana, we know which version we got out of him. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I just want to take a second, just 1 second, to just give a standing ovation to Mr. Jose Quintana. Standing ovation. This is exactly the type of start that the Mets needed out of Jose Quintana. As we have mentioned, we know what we're going to be getting out of Peterson at this point, surprisingly, but consistently, McNeil and Severino. What do we get from the rest of the rotation? Jose Quintana has put together 3 competent starts, right? Mostly in a row. And this is just absolutely solidifying the pitching efforts that the New York Mets have underwent. So I appreciate you all being here. We're going to get into this game. We're going to get into the state of the New York Mets. It's an electric time, guys. It's an electric time. I love it.
And another note on Quintana, 100th career victory today.
Excellent. Absolutely. Another milestone in a Mets uniform. Seems like the Mets always get the veterans that get their milestone, you know, Gary Sheffield and all that fun stuff as well. But 2 players of the game today, 2 guys that have been struggling, that been questioned by Mets fans all over the country, Jose Quintana and Harrison Bader. I put them as the players of the game. Usually there's only one, but I have to put both of them in there. Quintana pitched his ass off today. And Harrison Bader, damn, did he need that home run. I mean, and first opposite field home run of the season for him as well. And he got it all started in the 6th inning. And listen, at that point, the Mets were basically getting no hit for the most part. But you know what? The Mets find a way once again to win, and they get all their runs in the 6th inning. And you know, JD Martinez, 2 RBI double, and it just kept on going from there. And look, the Mets are finding so many different ways to win, and that's why this team is absolutely dangerous. I keep on saying it every single day. Basically, during this winning streak, they're finding ways to win, even when they're getting no hit, even when they have 15 strikeouts against the White Sox, they still find a way to win. And this is why all of us are getting excited about this team, because every day there's a new name in the lineup, in the rotation, or the bullpen that is stepping up and helping us win a ball game. And John, I'm going to start with you here. You know, today's game, right? A lot of people were worried about Quintana. We didn't know what we were going to get for him, but we knew that the offense was going to figure out a way to score runs. It's just how many were they going to need? And with Quintana's performance today, they needed basically Harrison Bader's home run today. So what did you take on the game today and the whole game overall?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only that was the second hit of the game. Iglesias started it off with that double with 2 out the inning before, but the defense again. Iglesias at second base, him and Lindor turning back-to-back double plays in the second and third innings. I mean, so I would have added Iglesias to the players of the games today. But yeah, but then some of the Mets we've talked about, Bader coming through with some was in a 2 for 43 slump and 0 for his last 15 before that home run. So things, but those double plays right there. The defense has been incredible during this 9-game win streak.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Iglesias should be in that player of the game. That's bad on me. He should be there too. I mean, it looks like Lindor and Iglesias been playing together for like 10 years up the middle. I mean, Ordonez, Alfonso,
Right.
It looks that good. It really does look that good. And you know what? Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. You don't want to see Jeff McNeil hurt and down and out for the season, but it might be a blessing in disguise. Maybe it's just, that little extra defense in the infield that's already really good. Making it even better up the middle. I mean, the plays Lindor and Iglesias made in today's game is just outstanding. And you know what? That could have caused a couple of runs. We might have been down early in that game if it wasn't for those defensive plays. But they figured it out. They got that. They got it done. And Chris, listen, we talked about in the pregame, right? We questioned Quintana. We definitely did. We didn't know where we were going to get from. What were we talking about? 5 innings, couple of runs, right? Well, he gave you 6 2/3 of 0 runs. I mean, he's an enigma. That's exactly what he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, please vote in my live chat poll. If you're in my chat, please go ahead and vote. I said, did you all expect this type of start from Jose Quintana? That's the poll of the day. I try to incorporate a poll of the game for each post game, and that's what it is. Because I told you all, and I asked you all in our pregame stream with Rob and myself, how many innings pitched do you all think Quintana goes? The vast majority of you all said about 5 innings pitched. He exceeded those expectations, especially with the rest of the values, primarily being 0 earned runs. And John, you're absolutely right, 100%. The defense behind him, it's so refreshing, I could imagine. And Ron Darling was talking about it on the broadcast, how refreshing it is to know that you have a sound defense behind you, especially up the middle. And Harrison Bader in center field and Lindor and Iglesias up the middle in the infield. That is awesome. I talked about it on the pregame, guys, right? If you all are part of the pregame chat, the changeup is Quintana's bread and butter. When he is throwing that changeup efficiently, and yes, the curveball too, and that's what you said in the pregame, Rob, but the changeup specifically, if he has command of that changeup and he is able to utilize that as a little bit of a different look in the off speed compared to that fastball, he is going to have a very high success rate. And that's exactly what happened tonight. His changeup was working extremely well. And honestly, I love Jose Iglesias. The at bat, like you said, for the first hit of the game, John, in terms of getting brushed back, a fastball right at your face, just getting out of the way, and then an outside pitch, taking it where it's pitched down the line for a double for the first hit of the game. That is beautiful professional baseball. But how about Pete Alonso coming through with a runner in scoring position? We dragged him in the pregame, Rob. We said he has been abysmal all season long with runners in scoring position. He's hitting about 211, somewhere around there in that range, give or take, with runners in scoring position. He comes through with a single up the middle, and honestly, I just like that approach. I like that approach. He attacked the pitch he wanted, and I want to see more of that aggressiveness from Pete Alonso and not getting caught, right, in a pitcher's advantageous count with 2 strikes, where it seems like he's going to get a slider in any part of the zone or maybe even outside of the zone and just swing automatically. So a lot of good processes that I saw tonight. It was an awesome win, a shutout victory for our New York Mets. We can go up and down the list. Adam Ottavino, obviously, I always roll my eyes when Adam Ottavino's up there on the mound when he gets brought into the game and I see him on my screen. But obviously, the runner steals automatically off of him and stealing third base. He gets the strikeout. Great job. But Danny Young, he had an electric inning out there, I believe in the 8th inning. That was some of the best stuff that I've seen from Danny Young all season long. And this is a season that we're talking about that Danny Young has been performing spectacularly. And Mets fans, don't forget, this was a minor league contract that David Stearns gave out in the offseason to Danny Young. So what a find that was, especially with the Brooks Raley season-ending injury, So, guys, I have nothing but good things to say in this post game. There's nothing bad to say right now. And to add the cherry on top, and shout out to the chat, like I said as well. Shout out to the chat. I appreciate you all. The cherry on top is that the Arizona Diamondbacks lost as well, and the Mets gained a full game on them as well in the standings. So let's go, guys. I'm freaking hype right now.
Absolutely. And the Braves are losing right now. I think it was 1-0 last time I checked to Toronto. So hopefully Toronto kicks their ass and we jump over the Braves, and we're right behind the Diamondbacks. And who knows, the Padres might be next. So listen, guys, the bullpen has turned a new leaf. The bullpen has been really good. I mean, ever since Ottavino said that it would be a mistake if the Mets would DFA him, he's been pretty solid. I know we don't trust him. I think, I don't think we trust him in a big spot as of yet, but he's been better, overall. Danny Young, absolutely. Diaz, it wasn't a safe situation when he came in. He made it a little interesting, but he got the job done. And I know there were some people on X that didn't want Diaz to come into the ball game with a 4-0 lead. I'm not too concerned about that. They don't like to warm him up in the bullpen, get him hot, and then not pitch him. And especially you don't want to get him hurt for have a lot of up downs, and that's not what you want to do. So throw him in the game and let him do his job. And listen, I always talk before a series. Don't talk about a sweep, because you're gonna find yourself in disappointment more often than not. But now we won the first 2 games. We can talk about the sweep because, well, tomorrow we have an opportunity to get 10 in a row and a sweep with Severino on the mound. These 2 games, I never felt like the Mets were in jeopardy of losing a game. I don't know how you guys felt. I'll get your opinion on that in a second. I felt confident in this game, even when we were getting no hit for a couple of innings. I felt like they were going to come through. And John, I don't know how you felt about that, but there's a confidence with Mets fans, even on social media, as negative as they can be. There's a confidence going throughout the Mets world with the fan base. And I don't know if it's the players putting that confidence on the field, or is it just Met fans just finally believing in this team? What do you think?
It's a little of both. I think this team is, if you look at the players on the field, you do see confidence in them, which I think does translate. It's translating the victories on the field, but then the fans also see that, and the fans are getting all hyped up about it as well. So, great stuff. This is the longest winning streak since 2018. And with a win tomorrow, it'll be 10 games. After the Mets got into the wild card spot, they kind of dropped back down a little bit. And we kind of felt like, well, here we go. Maybe this is where it does go downhill from here for the rest of the year with the schedule they have in September. But, man, this team is playing lights out right now. And I don't think they care who the opposition is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're dangerous. I don't think teams want to face us. How many times do we talk about, oh, God, we're going to Arizona. Oh, God, we're going to the San Diego. People are afraid of us now. Like, I've said this in the pregame, and I'm going to continue to preach it. I think we have the deepest lineup in baseball. Like, if you look 1 through 9, like, it's a hard go through if you're a pitcher on the opposing team. It's not easy at all. And, with 20 games to go, we know where the Mets are. The Mets, at the very least, are going to be tied with the Braves at the end of the night, depending on what the Braves do. But, how long can this streak go? Who knows? But the intangibles with this team is that, this is a team, like I just said, nobody wants to face, and that's including the playoffs. Chris, I wanted to get your opinion on the total spectrum of, the Jeff McNeil injury, was kind of a bummer, but we always talk about the next man up mentality with this New York Mets team. And we knew Iglesias is going to step in and do his job because he's a veteran professional. But after that news, the Mets didn't lose a beat. And I know Jeff McNeil isn't, Barry Bonds or, Aaron Judge or anything like that. But that was a loss for this team. And McNeil has been playing better. What are your thoughts on just the Mets just, saying, all right, next man up, let's get the job done? And they performed.
I mean, this is a testament to exactly the point that you just said, Rob. This team being one of the deepest teams lineup-wise in the entirety of the MLB. And we took some time on the pregame stream between us talking about who might be the call-up and how the Mets might look without Jeff McNeil. And like we all mentioned, and we all know that Jeff McNeil is a tale of two halves this season so far. He was absolutely abysmal in the first half, and then he turned it on with a 289 average, over a 900 OPS in the second half. And of course, that type of play that Jeff McNeil was having in the second half, of course, that always hurts to lose, right? You always hate to see that. He was playing, honestly, in my opinion, some pretty solid second base as well defensively, and he had the ability to play the outfield when Jose Iglesias was time to when it was time to put Jose Iglesias back in. But the Mets aren't going to lose a beat. And I said that in the pregame stream as well. It's a bummer, but they're not going to lose a beat because Jose Iglesias is more than capable. He has shown that he is able to have sustainable success, even given his age, and he's going to continue to have sustainable success. And let's not act like, and I don't want to just put it all on Jose Iglesias, right? But this team, ever since this whole OMG or the aura of Jose Iglesias came up, and I hate talking about this thing like the Grimace era or Rally Pimp. I hate to bring that upon the Mets team and being the reason why they're winning, but I'm just talking about guys that have a profound impact on the club, more so maybe than the public's eye knows, right? In terms of what's going on in the clubhouse, etc. When you bring in a veteran like that, also, by the way, another David Stearns acquisition this offseason that was on a minor league contract. That is two that we're talking about here that had profound impacts on this game and on the entire season so far. And Danny Young and Jose Iglesias. This is absolutely a position where the Mets aren't going to fall off of a cliff just because they're missing Jeff McNeil. That's not to throw any shade at Jeff McNeil. I know I've spoken about Jeff McNeil a certain way this season in the past in terms of when he was struggling. And honestly, my thoughts and opinions about Jeff McNeil's status and future on the Mets still is in limbo in terms of how I see him fitting, especially with the Ronnie Mauricio coming back next season. Maybe Jose Iglesias is a re-signed candidate on a 1 or 2 year deal to be a utility man. We don't know how that's going to work out. But at this very moment, especially depending on who the Mets bring up. Now, I saw an article or a tweet from Joel Sherman saying the Mets view their lineup having a lack of lefties, and that's why DJ Stewart might be the priority there. Spare me with that. I've never been a believer of that, and I never will, because I really think that it's situational fit and need over the need of just a lefty, quote unquote, to play the matchups. And Rob, you can attest to that. I've been saying that this whole entire season and even going back to last season, but nonetheless, I really am confident in terms of this platoon and this rotation in the infield. But if you bring us a guy like Luis Angel Acuna or a Luke Ritter that can also come into this merry-go-round of Jose Iglesias, Mark Vientos, and whoever else you deploy there being one of those two guys, I think that's the perfect storm. And make no mistake about it, Jose Iglesias is fantastic, but let's be honest, he's about early, I believe, to mid-30s. He's going to need some time off in his legs. There's going to need to be a spot starter there in between. There's going to be a need for a competent second baseman to make a spot start for Jose Iglesias. And that's exactly why I'm kind of I guess, pivoting towards the Luke Ritter / Luis Angel Acuna talk. But as it pertains to the Mets overall, they are not going to lose a beat. Anybody that is worried about the Mets losing a beat with Jeff McNeil shouldn't, because even though Jeff McNeil is very versatile, you have Jose Iglesias there who's been ripping the cover off the ball and playing spectacular defense as we saw tonight and all season long. And oh, by the way, you still have 5 competent outfielders on this roster right now that can play at any given position, especially right there patrolling center field in Harrison Bader, and then your corner outfielders in Marte, Nimmo, Winker, Tyrone Taylor, etc. So, guys, this roster is fit to be sustainable, not only offensively, but also with the bullpen. And hopefully we get the starting pitching continued success so we can set ourselves up for as many wins as possible.
Yep, absolutely. And John, we brought it up in the pregame about who's going to fill that roster, Jeff McNeil roster spot. we both had the same idea with Ritter, and a lot of people keep on bringing up Acuna. What are your thoughts? Who do you think that they should bring up, and who do you think they will bring up?
I don't know who they're going to bring up. My first hope is that it's not DJ Stewart. That's my first hope. I hope it's not Stewart. My chat can't stand DJ Stewart, but you do need a guy that's going to be able to be versatile and play a couple different positions. So Ritter or Acuna would be my guess. Now, I really didn't like when Mendoza said the other day it wasn't Acuna, is because they want him to be able to play every day. Well, now with McNeil hurt, you actually could bring Acuna up and play him at a couple different positions.
Yep.
You could play at second. But would we even be having this conversation if Beatty never got hurt?
Probably not. Beatty would have been the guy for sure.
Brady would have been the guy, right? So, absolutely. I mean, my preference is Acuna just because I want to see the young man play. But we'll see. We'll see who they bring up.
If it's DJ, like I would love to I trust Stearns. I think we all trust Stearns. We're not always going to agree with moves he makes, but if he does bring up DJ Stewart, I understand the left-handed bat. Mm-hmm. I'm so sick and tired of matchups. I didn't play the hot hand. Play the guy that deserves to be here. DJ Stewart, I don't care what he does in AAA. We know he can't perform. I mean, he's a failed prospect many years ago, and he is not the player that we saw late last year when he was playing for basically nothing. Well, he was playing for a contract, but the team was playing for nothing. Mm-hmm. I would like to see Acuna or Ritter, somebody who deserves it. They're both performing extremely well at AAA. I would bring those guys up. I mean, wouldn't you want another impact body on this roster to no matter who you put in this lineup? I don't want a guy that's like a deadbeat in this lineup. He can be a lineup killer. And, as good as the Mets are playing, you don't want one guy to, beat up this lineup because he sucks. Mm-hmm. Look, Acuna and Ritter, they could be bad when they come up, right? We don't know. But the possibility with Ritter, the power, and, I brought up his where he played everywhere in the infield except for catcher. Like, I didn't realize he was that versatile. And, Chris thought he didn't even play third, he only played third base. He plays everywhere. And that's the other thing. You can give guys days off. You can play this guy every day if you wanted to. And you can even DH him if you need to, give a JD a day off. And even Acuna, we know what he can play. We can play second. We know we can play short. He can probably play third and maybe the outfield in a pinch if somebody gets hurt or, in an emergency situation. So, yeah, I totally agree. Like, if it ain't one of those two guys and it is DJ Stewart because of left-handed bat, I think they missed the ball on that one. I wouldn't look. Is it gonna, derail us? I hope not. But it would just be disappointing. Met fans are on like cloud 9 right now. I mean, we're loving every second of this. And why the hell not? Why not bring more excitement that's already at Citi Field? How cool Acuna gets called up tomorrow. He'll get a standing ovation on Sunday at Citi Field. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. So we get
as it relates to that, though, Rob. As it relates to that, by the way, just for you all who don't know, Acuna and Ritter were in the AAA lineup tonight, and DJ Stewart wasn't. So if that's any indication, then I don't really know. But hopefully it's not. But I just needed to bring that up to you all because that's what I saw on the timeline today. And that was
way to ruin the stream, CP. Way to ruin the stream.
All right, that's the end of the post game, guys.
Oh man. But yeah, I mean, just bringing up a young guy would just not just give the fan base a shot in the arm, but maybe some of the other guys that, Bader's been struggling. Who else? Nimmo's been struggling. Hey, maybe you give these guys a couple extra days off by bringing one of these young kids up.
True.
And giving a shot in the arm to the lineup.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I agree with that because it's a thing where you already know what you're going to get out of DJ Stewart, right? It's a thing where you already know about that. And this Citi Field crowd has been absolutely buzzing, like even through the TV, right? Watching through the TV, it's electric in that stadium. And they were saying on the broadcast how much of a party environment it was, especially with the delay. So why not bring some more excitement to the fans? And I really think it's an overrated argument to say that, we're not going to bring up Luis Angel Acuna because we want him to play every day. I hope that's not the case because that would be like a Yankees-esque type of move in terms of how they're treating Jason Dominguez right now, right? Like that's something that I don't want to hear from this front office. I think especially with the way that this roster is constructed with the recent Jeff McNeil injury, you have an opportunity to spot start Luis Angel Acuna, or maybe even platoon him and work that merry-go-round with Mark Vientos, Jose Iglesias, and Luis Angel Acuna. And also the experience aspect of this all, playing meaningful baseball games in September and potentially being on the bench in October, does the world, right, for a young prospect like Luis Angel Acuna. So it's a win-win scenario, to be honest, for me, and that's why I'm kind of making my campaign surrounding Luis Angel Acuna. Do I think it's going to happen? As I said in the pregame, no, I don't, but that would be my first choice, and then after that, obviously Luke Ritter, because I don't want to see DJ Stewart up anymore. I have nothing against DJ Stewart, but we know what we're going to get out of him, right? We know we're going to get out of him. Why not try a different avenue? But the thing that I also wanted to pivot to as we transition from that sort of topic onto the next is the bullpen and the inner workings of this bullpen, because they have been amazing. And if M Easy is giving this bullpen credit, and I salute M Easy doing so in the chat, please salute, hats off to you, M Easy, for giving them credit. I've been a proponent of this bullpen for a long time, especially after the trade deadline. We've seen, especially in the last two nights, how elite this bullpen can be. And I know Amizi is not going to go as far to call it as elite, but I will, because I've already done so previously, and I'm going to stand 10 toes on that sort of statement. But I'm curious to you all, especially, right, knowing that we don't have Daniel Nunez, as someone in the chat mentioned earlier in the stream, especially when Daniel Nunez comes back. How do you configure your bullpen, right, to be as optimal as possible, right? You see Reed Garrett, you see what he's doing and how electric he is when he's in like more of a seventh inning type role and not so much an eighth inning type role. You see Edwin Diaz having this resurgence. So how do you align your bullpen to set up Edwin Diaz for as many save opportunities as possible if you have the lead late in the game and you're handing the ball off from your starter to your bullpen? I'm curious to get both of your perspectives on that.
Yeah, John.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob. I was reading my chat and I wasn't listening to Chris.
No problem. No problem. He just talked bad about you. It's all right.
No, that's
So, I think Ottavino might be on his way out. I think that might be the case. I might, because you got to fill a spot, right? I would think you would take Ottavino out of this situation, out of this bullpen, and then put Nunez back in. But you know what? I think it's going to depend on the situation per game. I don't think one guy. Look, the good news is the Mets have multiple setup guys. That's something that we didn't have 2 months ago, right? It was Reed Garrett one day and Prey, whoever else came in to get the bridge to Diaz. Now it can be anybody. It can be Buto. It can be Young, either Young. It can be Garrett. It can be anybody. And even Nunez when he comes back. So there's a lot of options there. I just think what I think Mendoza is going to start to do is not use Buto and Nunez when Nunez comes back the same game, because I think overall that hurts your I wouldn't say chances, but your opportunity to use them in multiple games at different times. It spreads it out a little bit where you can use your better arms more often instead of. Obviously, if it's a really, really crucial game, I mean, all of them are now, but I would think that it would depend on the situation, depending on the game. If there's tough lefties, Buto I believe has better numbers against lefties than Nunez, so you would put Buto in, or whatever situation. I don't like matchups, but when it comes to bullpen, I think Mendoza has done a good job matchup-wise, and I think, look, he has options now, and that's something that we didn't have. Mendoza didn't have. Remember, he was basically picking names out of a hat when the bullpen was in shambles. And now he has so many guys that you can trust, minus Ottavino. So it's gonna be really interesting. But you know what? I'd rather have a lot of guys to choose from than only one or two guys. So I guess that's the way I would think about it. I think situational is the way he's gonna go about it.
Yeah, situational is definitely going to be the way. Ottavino probably is the odd man out. I know my chat during live streams calls him not Avino. They don't want to see him at all. But like you guys said, we did say earlier, he has been fairly decent over his last few outings. But a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, it looks like he was going to get released or DFA'd. But he stuck around and helped us out. But somebody's got to go, and I don't know. Could it be one of the youngs? Could they send one of the young guys back down?
Yeah, probably. That's probably what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But they've both been absolutely fantastic for the Mets, Alex Young and Danny Young alike. And I know Alex Young hasn't really appeared in many games for the Mets so far. I think he's got like 8 or 9 innings under his belt for the New York Mets ever since he got brought in from the waiver wire from the San Francisco Giants. But it's like, honestly, deploying a 2-man lefty bullpen, I was not in favor of it before, but I also think that even with the success of Danny Young, like these guys aren't going to knock your socks off to have options for the New York Mets at this situation. And honestly, for me, I might just be making that excuse because I also don't want to see Adam Ottavino on this team anymore, to be honest with you. So the way you configure the bullpen for me is if Daniel Nunes is back and healthy and you trust in his health, then it has to be Reed Garrett for the 7th. It has to be Daniel Nunes for the 8th. And it has to be Edwin Diaz for the 9th. You have a plethora of options. Now, I will say, Phil Maton is dangerously close in my book to take that 7th inning as well. But you can't go wrong either way. And it depends on how obviously long the starter lasts. You have a plethora of options for that bullpen. It doesn't seem like the Mets are entrusting in Stanek in those early situations. And he's kind of been used as like a Diaz replacement if the game becomes a laugher. But you also have him just in case anything happens as well. So that's a very interesting conversation. And also, where do you put Jose Butto in that conversation, right? Jose Butto was thought to be a guy that gives you 2+ innings in the bullpen, maybe even 3. Where do you throw him in that conversation? Maybe he's the 7th inning guy, and then Reed Garrett gets bumped down. This is just a testament. The fact that we're having this conversation is a testament to the versatility and also the deepness of this bullpen, just like the lineup. The same thing can be said of the bullpen. And I just wanted to throw this out there because I've been preaching this all along. Some people have listened to me and they've agreed. Some people haven't. But like I said, I'm going to keep standing behind this bullpen because they have the names and the depth and the talent to be sustainable and to be successful if the Mets ever get into a situation where they're playing for a game that they need to get into the playoffs and it's kind of like a do or die situation. And also if they make the playoffs, and trusting them in a wild card series potentially. Like I trust this bullpen full throttle. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a scoreboard update, watch an update. Toronto's leading 4-0 in the top of the 4th against the Braves. The Phillies did lose to the Marlins 9-5, so the Mets gained a game on them. We're 7 games out of the division, and now we're at the moment we're in second. If the Braves lose, we'll be in second place in the NL East as well. So again, many avenues to make the playoffs, and the Mets gave them that opportunity, having multiple avenues to make the playoffs. So that's the update right there. And listen, guys, Maton and Stanek have a ton of postseason experience, and that's a huge. I think that's always a huge deal to me because look, we know Nunez is good, we know Butto is good, but do we really know in the biggest moment in the playoffs when all eyes nationally are on you, can they perform? We don't know that, and that goes for a lot of our core guys as well. Besides, Alonso, Nimmo, I know they had a little bit of playoff experience, but not enough. We don't know how these guys are going to perform. But you know what? I've seen Stanek, I've seen Maton do it in big spots. And those are guys, I'm going to tell you guys right now, the same thing that goes for Harrison Bader and Lindor with their postseason numbers. Those are the guys that I want in the mix. I know those Lindor and Bader will be in a lineup, but Stanek and Maton, I think they're going to be big proponents in the playoffs if the Mets do make the playoffs, because you always got to trust the guys that's been there and done that before, and they have pretty decent numbers in the postseason. So I think Stanek is going to get a lot more play these last 20 games. I think you're going to see him a lot more in bigger spots because, look, Stearns didn't bring him here just, to help us get through a season and get us to the playoffs. These guys have so much postseason experience. And, I believe Maton has championships in rings as well. So it works out for the Mets here that experience really does matter in those spots. I don't want the moment to get too big for guys that have not been there yet. And I think having these veteran guys that have been there before, I think is only going to help us going forward. So overall, I talked about this probably 150 times with Chris already, but I wanted to ask you, John, about 2 weeks ago, not even, the Mets basically had one opportunity to make the playoffs, and it was the third wild card. They turned it around with this 9-game winning streak. Winning streak. I don't want to.
lot different attitude right now on this post game if we're on a 9-game losing streak.
Listen, we're so used to failure, it just feels right to say it, right? So 9-game winning streak.
Somebody clip that. We're so used to failure.
Yeah, I'm gonna get killed for it in the comments later. I already know it. But they found themselves in a position where now there's ways to get into the playoffs with other options, the second wild card, the third wild card, possibly the division that's still somewhat out of reach, but still obtainable. Obviously, 7 games out with 7 to go against the Phillies, things can happen rather quickly. And, even the first wild card is a possibility. Now, they got 4 opportunities or avenues to make the playoffs. I mean, I wasn't even expecting they were going to have that many opportunities. I thought it was going to be the Braves and the Mets, and they were going to fight it until the end, until we go to Atlanta, second to last series of the year. What is your take, the turnaround? What is your take on this whole situation that this Mets team have put themselves in? And it's a great spot because we also got tiebreakers with the Padres and the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets were kind of back and forth there for a while, and then they were going into that 10-game stretch where they played Baltimore, San Diego, and Arizona. And to me, that was the big point of the year. You go 3-7 in that stretch, you can probably start worrying about next season, and maybe only the last wild card spot. But the Mets go 6-4 over that stretch, and then sweep the White Sox, and now we have taken the first 2 against Cincinnati here. So. Yeah, and somebody brought it up in the live stream today during the game that they didn't care about what Philadelphia was doing because we're not winning the division. Well, first game, like Rob said multiple times now, the Mets have 7 games left against Philadelphia. Now, are the Mets going to sweep all 7 games of those? Probably not. But hey, crazier things have happened. Like Rob also just said, that the Mets own the tiebreakers. They have the tiebreaker with San Diego and Arizona. I thought San Diego was going to be the team that would fall back a little bit. So far, it's been Arizona. The Mets, I think, are only a half game behind them now for the second wild card spot. I'm not sure what's going on with San Diego right now, but yeah, if the Mets just keep taking 2, I always go into a series wanting to take 2 out of 3.
Yes.
I know you guys are always saying 1 game at a time. Don't worry about a sweep until you get to that 3rd game anyway. So yeah, here we are, won the first 2 games against Cincinnati. And now going for another sweep, and then we get to start another series. I believe we start Toronto on Monday. Let's go in. Let's take 2 out of 3 from Toronto and just keep pushing forward and let the chips fall where they may after the 7. It's tough, though. It's 7 against Philadelphia, and then 3 against Atlanta at the end and 3 against Milwaukee to end the season. So it's gonna get tough here down the stretch.
Well, it's going to be interesting with Milwaukee at the end of the season because they might set up their rotation for the playoffs since they're going to be playing on the wild card series, or one of them, whoever they're going to face, because they're not going to have they might, but I don't think they're going to have the 2 best records. So they're going to have to play whatever wild card team. It's a possibility the Mets might face Milwaukee in the wild card series, depending on where the Mets end up and where the Brewers seem like they're set in that whoever's the 3rd wild card they're going to face most likely. But it's going to be very interesting though, because I think that Brewers series, they're going to set up their rotation. I don't know if they're going to play everybody. I don't think they're going to risk injury. So that might benefit the Mets if the Mets need those games. But I think it's going to come down to the Braves series. I'm not saying that it's going to be the Braves and the Mets that, whoever's going to take that series is going to jump over each other. It might just, be the Mets remain in the 2nd spot in the wild card or closer to the division or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting because look, the Mets are. I did the math 2 weeks ago. If the Mets just keep winning series and split that 4-game series against Philadelphia, they were around the 87, 88 win mark, right? They already surpassed the math that I did because they swept a couple of series and they played better on the West Coast than I thought. And look, they can go 10-10 in their last 20 and have 88 wins, right? And that's an average 500 rest of the season. So if they play 2-3 games, we're talking about 90 wins, everybody. 90 wins for a Mets team that was quote unquote in a transition year, as a lot of Mets fans called it. And you know what? Me and Chris were right on the money with our win totals, 85 and 87. Like, there's a pretty good chance they're going to surpass that.
Wow.
Or at least be right on that number, hopefully around 87, because it seems like that's going to be close to the number where they're going to go. And John, did you predict a win total?
I did. At the beginning of the year, I thought the Mets would be right around 500. I thought 82, 83 wins, and with a couple good breaks, definitely in the wild card hunt. So they're definitely going to be above that, or should be above that now. So
yeah, exactly. Like, it is interesting though, because I know we've all done a ton of shows. How many people said 75 wins? Oh, at the trade deadline, we're going to trade everybody. Like, I understand why people were down on the offseason, but looking at what David Stearns had to do first year as president of baseball ops, he's got to learn the prospects. He got to learn the minor league system. He has to change things. He's got to get his own people in there. It's a lot of things. And listen, he got a lot of guys on prove-it type of deals. Chris brings this up almost all the time, and he's spot on about this. A lot of guys that people, how many we heard Yankee fans say we got their hand-me-downs with Severino and Bader. You don't think they would want Severino in that rotation right now in the pinstripes? Absolutely. So doing that and getting the right guys, because you can give guys 1-year deal, prove it deals, but you have to get the right guys. He did his homework on the right guys. And listen, Bader and Severino remained healthy, so that's a big key. But you have to pick the right guys on those prove it deals. And he's got an A plus in my book. I know there's a couple of mishaps. Obviously, you can't be perfect. But Chris, you brought it up so many times, and you're spot on about that. How good David Stearns at picking the right guys on prove it deals.
He navigated a whole offseason in which the Mets fans basically knew there was no expectations to be had, minus looking forward to who Yoshinobu Yamamoto was going to sign the mega deal with, which the Mets were right in that race until the very end. Other than that, we all knew it wasn't going to be a flashy offseason, right? There was some foreshadowing of that from last season, but the way that David Stearns came in here and navigated the free agency market in such a manner where he brought value to the team without giving up a lot of value contractually in return, not only provided the Mets with a, let's say, playoff contending team where a lot of fans, right, especially more of the negative fans, didn't think that was going to be the case, but he also in turn helped the salary, or the I should say, the salary cap and the number ease up a little bit. And I haven't paid attention to Justin Verlander's innings this year, but I don't think he's going to hit that threshold that the Mets would have owed him if he had hit. I forgot exactly how many innings pitched it was. So that's also going to be some salary relief as well. And now you're going to talk about an offseason, right? Presumably and hopefully after the Mets make a playoff appearance and a playoff run, but a offseason where the checkbook is going to be open. I just saw a tweet from Bleacher Report walk-off, that account, saying the top 10 landing spots for Corbin Burns. There's going to be no doubt in my mind that the Mets are going to be in play for one of those premier starting pitchers. Now, I think Severino, obviously we'll talk about the game tomorrow here, I'm assuming, and Severino going tomorrow, and Manaea are re-signed candidates, but you still need to make one major splash. Offensively, depending on what happens with Pete Alonso, and pitching in terms of filling the starting rotation. But you look at the guys who have come on and have been successful this season, right? A rotation of whatever premier free agent you want to bring in, Senga, Manaea, Severino, and David Peterson, if he continues this stretch of run and he carries that over into next season, that's already a fantastic borderline, I don't want to say elite, but that's an above average rotation that you'll be starting 2025 off with. So I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but this is the beauty and this is the baseball savvy that is David Stearns. And everyone talks about GM. I'm not even confident they'll hire a GM because why would they need one? David Stearns is going to be making all these moves himself. He really is. You talk about contracts, and I know, let's get this out of the way. Adrian Hauser was a bust. Jake Diekman was a bust. Joey Wendell was a bust. Michael Tonkin was a bust until he landed a home, right, where he's a little bit more comfortable with the Yankees. But let's take a look at, and I dropped this video on my channel. It's on my channel. I took a look at all of the guys that he brought in here at the trade deadline and also in the offseason. Alex Young, off of waivers, Danny Young, Jose Iglesias, right, via minor league contracts, JD Martinez, right? You talk about Jesse Winker via the trade deadline, Tyrone Taylor, who is a awesome fourth or fifth outfielder to have on your team, right? I can keep on going up and down this list, and it's going to just show the reputation, the reputable, I guess, the reputability that David Stearns has had in this league. And you take a look at that Milwaukee Brewers organization right now and how they're coasting to a division title again. That team was set up for success by none other than David Stearns. Long-term success. And that's exactly what the Mets wanted. That's what Steve Cohen wanted, was long-term sustainability while also being in win-now mode. Coming into the season, it was a very hard thing to do both, being sustainable long-term and also trying to win now and make the playoffs. And guess what? The Mets look like they have hit that perfect peak in terms of being in that middle. And that's a power to David Stearns. He deserves an ovation himself. David Stearns has been an absolute mastermind.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's also, people talk about Stearns. Oh, he hasn't won his team hasn't won in the playoffs. We have to understand what he was allowed to do with a cheap owner in Milwaukee at the deadline. You don't think he would want to make moves like the Mets added money to the deadline, added some guys? They traded a couple of guys away, minor league guys, but they did add money to the payroll. Milwaukee never did that at the deadline. It was rare. So he was limited on what he can bring in money-wise. So he might have won a pitcher here, a bullpen arm here, a starter there, maybe even a bat there. But the money, the owner wasn't willing to take in that money. And this is why it's going to be great. Even though Stearns didn't go for the big fish this trade deadline, but he got the right guys, the necessities that this team needed. And he got them. Even though they weren't the big names, they're all helping his team at this point. And that's a huge deal. And again, the playoffs in general is a crapshoot now. It's not the best team is going to make the World Series and win it all, right? Baseball has been a very, NHL type of playoffs now. Get in and anybody can win, right? It's not the NBA. It's not the NFL. The best teams usually win. Baseball playoffs is not the case anymore. And that's the beauty of, the parity in baseball. Look, there might not be a 100-win team in baseball this year. So the parity is it's really, really close, even though there's a lot of bad teams, right? I don't think anybody can say there's a great team out there. Anybody's beatable. But we'll see how the Mets perform with David Stearns, under the helm and being the leader. And we'll see. Look, Milwaukee never got to the World Series, won a World Series, but they were consistently in the playoffs. When you're consistently in the playoffs, there's a chance. And that's what the Mets have lacked throughout their history. Could we make the playoffs 3 years in a row? That would be a first, right? That would be a first. That would be a good start. So consistently making the playoffs is a chance to win the World Series. So I'd rather have that chance than not having that chance. So, and Stearns has done that almost to perfection with the Milwaukee Brewers, making the playoffs almost every season that he was controlling that team.
Rob, I just took a look at, not to kind of shift this back into what we saw tonight, but that's a beautiful point. Like, I think that everybody at this point should know that if you were David Stearns naysayer in the offseason, okay, fine. But if you are one of those naysayers and you're not opening up your eyes to what's happening in front of you and how much of a leap in year one this Mets organization has took, then I don't think any one of us on this screen, any three of us, can help you, right? I mean, that's just up to you to figure out. But what I will say, though, is Jose Quintana, beautiful pitch distribution. I just went on Baseball Savant to look at his outing and his game log tonight. 100 pitches flat for Jose Quintana, obviously in 6 2/3 innings pitched. It's unfortunate because he would have went the full 7. Vientos had to make a little bit of a tough play, made the short throw, and Pete Alonso couldn't handle it. So then obviously Jose Quintana's night was done. But of the 100 pitches, beautiful distribution. 29 four-seam fastballs, 26 changeups, 25 sinkers, and 18 curveballs. That is a beautiful distribution. And he threw 2 sinkers, which don't really matter, but keeping the hitters guessing in terms of what was coming. You know, my favorite at bat in this game, looking at the, I guess, methodicalness of, if that's even a word, I just made that up, of Jose Quintana, was that at bat to, I believe it was Stevenson. It was Stevenson, where he had him 0-2. This ended up being a walk, which kind of infuriated me because he did everything right beforehand in terms of setting up the strikeout, but he got up 0-2. He established the fastball, right? And Stevenson was sure the changeup was coming, but Jose Quintana decided to fool him with the fastball. Unfortunately, it was a couple of balls too low. It was close. It was close, but they obviously weren't strikes. But just that sort of beauty in the pitch selection and playing that kind of mind game with the hitters and throwing them out of rhythm is something that I always watch out for when I watch the Mets and I watch the pitcher that's up on the mound. And I just had to bring that out there because this was a very well executed outing by Jose Quintana and whoever was calling those pitches for him, whether it was Alvarez himself or anybody in the dugout.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. That's just a perfect talk of what Chris. I just lost my train of thought, but exactly what you said, Chris.
You're speechless. You're speechless. I mean, you're speechless. It's okay. My analysis is speechless.
I'm in euphoria right now. The Mets are doing something that I don't see very often in my lifetime. So, but yeah, listen, the Braves are getting beat up right now, 6-0. Good news for us. The Mets will have sole possession of a wild card spot and jump over the Braves. Again, 20 games to go, a lot to go. There's a lot of work still to go. Things can happen rather quickly, as we've seen. The Mets were 4 games back of the Braves not too long ago, and in the snap of a finger, we're ahead of them. That's how quickly things can happen. They can go in our favor, and they could not go in our favor. But right now, this team is on a roll. They find ways to win in any way possible. It doesn't matter the circumstance of the game. They find a way to win, especially during this 9-game winning streak, and they go for the sweep tomorrow and for 10 in a row tomorrow with Severino on the mound. And I want to get to Severino a little bit because Severino is way above his innings pitched that he hasn't done since 2018, long time ago. And we saw him, have a little crack in that armor, started looking like he was getting a little fatigued a couple of starts ago, but he took a deep breath. It seemed like, he figured things out. He talks about it all the time, about his sleep, his therapy that he's getting, that was a huge reason why he believes that he got injured a lot and he wasn't performing to his capabilities. And if that's all true, that's great. But with Luis Severino, John, I want to get to you with Luis Severino. The turnaround, and I've said this even when me and Chris, we were live when we signed him. I said, I think the Yankees destroyed that young man. I think they destroyed him. They kept him on the IL too long sometimes, played games with him, put him in the bullpen. It just felt like they wanted to do everything to make him not do well. and he was always hurt with the Yankees. And I felt like the Yankees didn't do a good job of keeping him healthy and listening to him, because this is Cy Young Severino that we've seen in the Yankees. That's how well he's pitched, and he has ace type stuff. So I want to get your thoughts on Severino. Do you think he can continue this for the rest of the season and possibly be a big guy in the playoffs as a starter? Because he hasn't pitched well as a starter in the playoffs with the Yankees. So what are your thoughts on Severino way above his innings pitched?
Yeah, well, in the offseason when they signed him, first thing I thought was that they gave him too much money for a guy that hasn't pitched over 100 innings in a long time. But then I got worried about him when he did get to about that 100-inning mark. He had a couple rough starts. But, I mean, what Severino are we going to see tomorrow? Are we going to see the Severino we saw against Miami or Boston? Or are we going to see the Severino we saw against Arizona and Seattle? Where he doesn't go he went 5 innings against Seattle, but gave up 4 runs in both of those games. So, but yeah, I mean, I think he's got confidence back. Now, you never know. That's why they play the game every day. You never know what a pitcher is going to do. But, yeah, I have all the confidence in the world going into tomorrow's game that Severino is going to give us 5, 6, maybe even 7 great innings and give us the Mets a chance to win another ball game and sweep another series.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, it's interesting because we loved the signing of Severino. We didn't think it was too. I don't know if we really got into the money talk. I know a lot of people thought it was too much money, but I mean, the going rate for a bad to average pitcher, it was going around that mark. And again, average pitchers are getting like $18 to $20 million. So I mean, it seems like a real bargain now, but we were so on board with Severino. We thought he was going to bounce back in a big way as long as he stayed healthy. And look, how many times have we talked about extending him throughout the season? That's how good Severino has been.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think we're going to start to see that, and it was especially evident last offseason where you take a look at the free agency in terms of the pitchers market, and a lot of guys, especially like a Lance Lynn that went to the Cardinals for the amount that he did. Like, these pitchers are going to be making hefty amounts, whether they're on a 1-year deal or like a 3-year deal. Sonny Gray, who has been like decent, right? He's been a pretty good pitcher, like he's making $25 million as well. So, I think it was honestly a bargain at $13 million was what he got. Obviously, it was a 1-year deal, so it wasn't really much risk to either side. It was more of a risk for Severino, but he had no choice in terms of proving himself. And after coming back off of his worst year of his career, but the Mets, it was really not really a risky signing. The overpay that I thought during the offseason was Harrison Bader and what he made. But obviously, we'll talk about that at a different time. And I think Harrison Bader has earned his money so far this season with what he's produced, right, in terms of staying healthy and just appearing in these games and providing his services. But no, Severino, I think that obviously over the last couple of weeks per se, he's been kind of up and down. He has provided a little bit of inconsistency, but let's not also forget the fact that when the Mets learned that they were going to be without Kodai Senga for an extended period of time in the beginning of the season, it was Luis Severino who stepped up and was acting as the Mets ace in that rotation. And that was way before Sean Manaea started to really turn it on, adjusting his mechanics and doing what he's doing now. Obviously, Severino has the likes of Peterson and Manaea behind him now to kind of solidify that rotation. But at one point, it was getting to the point where we were like, dude, we need Severino. Like, we're looking forward to these Severino starts because we don't really know what we're going to get behind him. And that's just a credit to him. And I know that he's approaching his innings limit. Honestly, I have full confidence in him. I think he's going to be a re-sign candidate because the way I think about Luis Severino is not the starting pitcher 1 or 2 that he's needed to be in the absence of Kodai Senga and before Sean Manaea and David Peterson turned it on, but he's more of a starting pitcher 3 or better yet 4 in a good rotation. And if he is a re-sign candidate to a friendly deal, obviously to him, he deserves his money, but also hopefully he's not asking for too much because at the end of the day, contracts both work both ways. And that's something we'll see with Pete Alonso. Hopefully they can come to a friendly agreement. And if he is starting out as the Mets starting pitcher for next year, that's a perfect slot for him to build off of the success that he's already had this season. For me, he's shown me enough already, regardless of what happens between now and the end of the season. He's shown you that he can be competent, a sub-4 ERA over what? I mean, we're talking about an innings pitched limit where he's superseded or exceeded, right, what he's done in the last couple of years, ever since 2018 and 2017, his all-star season. So yeah, 100%, I believe in him, and I believe in him tomorrow. And I think that knowing Luis Severino and the gamer that he is, there's been a handful of times where Luis Severino has been out there in the later stages of the game, and Carlos Mendoza has a decision to make whether to stick with him or bring in the bullpen. He goes out there, has a little bit of a chat with Luis Severino. Looks like Luis Severino wants to stay in the game. Okay, you're staying in the game. This is your game to lose. And guess what? Luis Severino pulls through. So, like I said, I have full confidence in him. I know he's had a couple of hiccups along the way, which is expected, but he has exceeded my expectations for the most part this season. And I was absolutely ecstatic that David Stearns and the Mets decided to take a flyer on him in this past offseason.
Yeah, I think Mendoza has a lot to do with Severino's success as well. I think the trust there, Mendoza talked about it, that, when he was with the Yankees, them two had a bond. They worked things out. Again, Mendoza didn't have a lot of power to do much, or I looked like he was basically always behind Aaron Boone all the time. And listen, you think Mendoza's shown you that he understands his players, he gets his players, he trusts his players. He knows how to speak to his players. And Severino knowing him, I think it is a huge deal. And the reason why Severino's success is, yes, obviously Severino figuring his own self out, but definitely Mendoza as well. But talking about, you brought up Kodai Senga. Nationally, I know Met fans bring it up enough, but nationally, nobody's really talking about, we're doing this without Kodai Senga, our ace. That's a huge deal that a lot of people are talking about. We hear everybody bitching, moan about Atlanta. Oh, look at the injuries there. Then, when Philly had a couple of injuries, and then, it was everybody else, Tatis and with the Padres, and, Walker with the Diamondbacks. We haven't had our ace all year. He pitched, a half a game this year? And we're doing what we're doing right now, on the verge of possibly making the playoffs and on the verge possibly to 90 wins. Like, that's all without Kodai Senga. And that's credit to everybody, from the top executive to the owner, all the way down to the ball boy. Like, it's everybody. Like, that, this is not easy to do. I don't think, how many times can you say a team turns it around without their ace? And definitely, we're most likely not going to have Kodai Senga for the playoffs. I know there's been some thought that he might be available. I mean, would they take that chance? I mean, I guess you would, but I don't know if you can do that in a wild card series, especially when you got Peterson, Severino, and Manaea, which I think everybody would want those three guys in a 3 wild card game as well. So, John, when it comes to Kodai Senga and the lack of Kodai Senga this year, there might be a possibility he might come back for the playoffs. What are your thoughts about possibly bringing him back if he is healthy and comes back? Or do you want to roll at least with the wildcard series with the 3 guys I just mentioned?
Well, yes. A couple of things with Senga. I mean, the fan base, you could see the team got excited when Senga was getting to come back. And he gets injured, and they kind of went flat after that, right? They played like 500 baseball over the next 10 to 14 days or so. So they've been able to sustain that. But like you said, without their number one pitcher. But I haven't followed it close enough. I know there's been rumblings. I would not start him in the playoffs. If they could somehow work him out where he can be the first guy, maybe in long relief out of the bullpen. Your starter gets in trouble in the second or third, early in the fourth. Maybe bringing a guy like Senga in. This way, there's not too much pressure on him, and you can only maybe use him for a couple innings there. But hopefully they leave that up to the training staff. And if not, I mean, you just build around the rest of the rotation with him being your number one guy going into next season as well, which automatically makes, like you guys said, building this Mets roster up to be playoff teams every year. I mean, the pitching staff right now, I know Severino and Manaea, I believe they both have opt-outs, right? So you got to get those guys back, but hey, I mean, this is going to be a great rotation. Just adding Senga back next season, definitely. But yeah, I mean, if the team thinks he's ready, I would use him as a bullpen in the postseason, but not in a starting position.
Yeah, and you know, it is amazing because we're doing all this, and we actually have a farm system now as well that can help out along the way. If not this year, definitely next year. So you know, a lot of things are working in our favor right now. And again, I don't like to talk about next year yet, but it's going to be on our mind at some point. But right now, I mean, before we last couple of minutes of the stream, is this starting to feel like 2015 a little bit? Where in 2015 in spring training, Sandy Olson talked about 2016 is going to be our year. 2015 is kind of that, getting the young kids involved and ready to go and be prepared. And 2015 was quote unquote transition year. And then 2015 was the year. It's 2024. It seems like that, even though it's not with a lot of young guys like we had. We don't have the rotation like we had in 2015, but it just seemed like it was like we're in that transition year that everybody talked about, yet they're performing well above expectation. I want to get your thoughts, Chris. To me, I brought this up, I think, about a month or two ago. It feels like 2015 all over again. Now, hopefully, we replicate the postseason and better outcome in the World Series. But do you feel like it's feeling a lot like 2015 this year?
I mean, the more we talk about it, then it takes away from the 2015 vibe, to be honest with you. But yeah, it does kind of seem like that in terms of just like the aura around this team and how they're building momentum late in terms of making a playoff push. What I will say is that obviously, like you said, the rotation was much better in 2015, but I think this offense is 10 times better than what we had in 2015.
Great.
I really do. This offense is a lot deeper than we had in 2015. I was surprised that 2015 team went as far as they did with the personnel that they had, even though they had great pitching. And I think that, as you mentioned this a lot, Rob, if the Mets find themselves in the postseason, right, and this goes for any team, not just the Mets that's in the wild card or wherever, and we've seen it the last 2 years in the NL, especially with the Diamondbacks and the Phillies, like you can make a run at any given point. Any team can beat any team. Like you said, the parity in baseball right now, I think, is the best in all of sports in terms of having an even level playing field, even despite having a super team out there on paper with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And we've seen that also. These great teams crumble to the quote unquote inferior teams. We saw it with the Phillies when they beat the Braves, right? In the postseason. So I really do think that anything can happen and anybody can go on this magical run, including the New York Mets. But for right now, like I said, I mean, for me, it's series by series. Obviously, we can talk about here this offseason that's going to commence as well, because I think that if we're talking about this team, obviously it's a foregone conclusion that we want to see this team in the playoffs, but we're also excited for what's to come in the offseason in terms of building this roster to be that sustainable winner. But I think you got to focus at getting to the playoffs first and then talking about stacking up your rotation in a way that gives you the best possible chance to win. Like you said, probably Manaea, Peterson, and Severino at that point as your top three starters. And then taking it from there. Listen, I have a very sour taste in my mouth in terms of what happened in that San Diego Padres wildcard series in 2022. I really do. And I'm really looking forward for the Mets, and I was looking forward for the Mets to get back to the postseason last season and get some revenge. And we were both on camera, on stream, and we know how we were talking about the New York Mets in the lost season last year. This is an opportunity under David Stearns year one to get some of that revenge. And I'm not saying this team is going to make the World Series or anything like that, but as soon as you hit the playoffs, you got to get there first, obviously, because there's a tough remaining schedule. But at this point, with the way this Mets team is playing as a cohesive unit and just the vibes that are around this team and the stadium in general with the fans, etc., I mean, the possibilities might be endless. And before we end this stream, also, I know we're going to give some final thoughts here in a second, but how cool was that with Hector, our guy Hector from the Roundtable podcast, getting to meet Sean Manaea today and go backstage there with Sean Manaea, acting as Sean Manaea's guest. If you all don't know, Hector was in his softball team, happened to catch, I believe, Manaea during the All-Star break at
Central Park.
Central Park, yeah.
Right. And he was looking to throw. Obviously, Sean Manaea wasn't he didn't really reach full Sean Manaea like potential that we're seeing right now of him in the production. That was kind of like the start of it. And I guess Hector kind of recognized who that was. And Shamanaya asked them to play catch. He was kind of getting accustomed to the city. So really cool story. I know Anthony DeComo has been all over it, but really cool to see that Hector and the rest of his softball team were able to meet Shamanaya. And also just a credit to Shamanaya himself as a person. And this Mets team, did you all catch in the pregame on the broadcast when I guess the kids are all lined up into certain positions, etc., and the players go out there to run onto the field and they get to meet each player at each position? That is so cool, man. Just seeing that kind of interaction, making a very memorable moment for these kids. The Mets do it the right way, and these guys are true professionals through and through, both on and off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember, speaking about meeting players, when John Rocker was a Brave, obviously, many years ago. I never forget, I was at Shea Stadium and I was sitting, I believe it was the right field, left field. I forgot what, if left or right field, wherever the away bullpen was, I think it was left field. They would, I remember John Rocker was warming up. The Mets were losing by a run. And I don't remember how old I was, maybe like 11, 10, 9, whatever the hell it was. And I was with my dad. I'll never forget. And I cursed at John Rocker. And he looked up at me with the meanest mug and just gave me the middle finger. I'll never forget that. And I looked at him like, you asshole. Because he used to take the 7 train on purpose because he used to like to talk about how dirty and disgusting New York was. And I never, to the day I never forget that. It was like, I was like, holy, I'm like, I'm like 12. Like, seriously, you're going to give me the middle finger? I know I cursed you out, but like, come on. Like, but yeah, look, meeting a player, I don't care if it's a player you hate or not. It's always very interesting. So let's get our final thoughts, right? We're going for the sweep tomorrow. We're going for 10 in a row. We're 14 games over 500. We're going for 15 games over 500. I mean, amazing. Like, I mean, the turnaround is, we're what? We completely turned over 22 games from 11 games under 500. I mean, it's an amazing turnaround. Nobody probably expected that at all. John, since, we're together now as a trio and first time on the post-game show all together, I want to get your final thoughts about the remaining 20 games, about this team, and let everybody know where they can find your channel and what you'll be doing on your channel going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I want to give a shout out to Jonathan over on the Pure Adrenaline channel. Gave a $2 super chat. I'd say an MVP for Lindor or Ohtani. And yes, this season is like 2015, he says. So, hey, no DH has ever won MVP. So I'm going to stick with that. And I'm going to say Lindor is going to get MVP.
Yes.
So we're going to stick with that. But yeah, plenty of Mets coverage coming up, live in-game play-by-play over on our channel. So covering, I think the only game the rest of the way I can't do is the game this coming Wednesday against Toronto. I believe it's a day game, so I'm going to miss that one. But we'll have the Mets covered the rest of the year as well. But yeah, I mean things are heating up, and the rest of the season for the Mets, I mean they're going to have to play well against the teams they're going to have to play in the postseason anyway. So we'll see what kind of team they actually do have. And when they went on that 10-game stretch against Baltimore, San Diego, and Arizona, we said that was going to show them a lot. They go 6-4 in that stretch. So let's see how they do in at least 7 against Philly, 3 against Atlanta, 3 against Milwaukee. So plenty of Mets coverage coming up over on the Pure Adrenaline side. So thank you everybody that's supporting us, and thank you for. I know a lot of the guys from your guys' streams have started to come over to us, but also thank you to the Pure Adrenaline guys that have been with me all season that are starting to show you guys some love and support as well. So, guys, make sure you subscribe to all 3 of our channels and make sure you hit those thumbs up anytime there's a live stream. Because the thumbs ups are more important than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think people don't realize the subscribes are awesome, but the thumbs up gets you at the top of the list for streams that you're looking for. And yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's always great to bring other subscribers to great content creators, especially Mets content creators, right? Look, nobody's greedy here, right? We're all rooting for the same team here. And, if we can help out one channel or another, doesn't matter how big you are or small you are. Listen, your shit. And that's the way I always look at it. I was small at one point. John was small at one point. We all started from the bottom. We work our way up. but there's no reason why you can't help one another to help get subscribers and get everybody's channel out there, because everybody does hard work here. It's not easy. We all know that. When it comes to the channel, it's a lot of work, and I do appreciate everybody tuning in and from all the channels. Make sure you subscribe to all of us. And Chris, final thoughts, 20 games to go, 14 games over, going for 10 in a row and a sweep tomorrow. Final thoughts, and let everybody know what's going on with your channel.
Yeah, I'm just blessed to be up here with you, big shots, here in terms of your YouTube channels, and obviously I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers myself. But yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you all for collaborating with me as well. It's always a great conversation. John and I, obviously, you know, we're doing some newer stuff here in terms of just recently collaborating with one another. And Rob, we've been doing shows for the past over a year now, right? Going back into 2023. So it's nice to finally have this kind of trio, and hopefully it's consistent going forward. So please, if you guys haven't subscribed to my channel as well, it's at CPNY Sports. That's CPNY Sports. You see me in everybody's chat. You know, Pure Adrenaline, Talking Mets with Rob, etc. Just want to provide consistent coverage, and obviously this is going to be a very, very exciting time going forward for the New York Mets, and for you all to kind of chime into our chats and provide your analysis as well, because we love to read chats, we love to interact with you all, and that's what's so fun about doing this. So thank you so much. And in terms of my final thoughts of the Mets, obviously, like John said, it's going to be a very tough stretch of the rest of the season, but this team has proven that they are going to be up for the challenge, and I think that this roster is talented enough to compete with anybody in the MLB, and they've shown that a lot of times against the top premier competition. And what better way to get yourself into the postseason by beating teams that you are division rivals with and you're absolutely looking up at, in terms of the Braves and the Phillies. So 100% very excited, but I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with 9 straight. This was awesome. I love that we are in September talking about 9 straight wins, but I need 10. And that starts tomorrow at, I believe, what, 1:40 p.m., if I'm not mistaken, start time? Believe so. 1:40 p.m. I appreciate you all being here. Give me 10 in a row and keep spamming those W's. As long as the Mets are getting W's, keep spamming those W's in the chat. Please hit that thumbs up. I appreciate it. And see you all tomorrow. By the way, let's go Giants. How about we get Let's Go Giants in the chat too?
Way to ruin a great post-game show.
Hey, I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm screwed already, so it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Like I said, they just might. Hey, you know, I'm not even gonna do it because my dad's a diehard Jets. I'm not even gonna say anything. Let Aaron Rodgers get through one game, then we'll talk about where they're gonna go. So again, guys, appreciate everybody tuning into the Mets postgame show. John, Chris, and myself. Always, it's gonna be a fun time because we're gonna do this more often. And 20 games to go, a lot of work to do for the Mets. They're not done yet, and let's see if they can get 10 in a row tomorrow. So with everybody in the chat, let's go Mets. We'll see you next time. John and CP, always a great time. Have a good night, guys. We'll see you tomorrow, and let's go Mets. Have a good night. Enjoy your Sunday and football Sunday, first week of the season. Let's go Mets, guys. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Let's go Mets.